Okay, hey everybody. This is like the 15th time I've recorded this because every time I do, I feel so awkward and I listen to it and I sound like an idiot. Uh, anyways, we're going to talk about meat quality this week. Basically, how to identify the differences between some meats. We'll look at, if you look at B here, we'll look at wholesale cuts and then we'll look at some retail cuts. And then we'll do the other stuff next week. Um, so we will start right here. We're looking at this graph right here is how many pounds of each type of meat an average person in the United States eats a year. Um, so you can see over here on the left side, this is back in the 1900s, 1909 specifically, right? Almost nobody ate turkey, right? There was very little turkey eaten. Maybe 10,000 or 10 pounds of chicken were eaten by a person a year. 40 pounds of pork were eaten a year, and about 55 pounds of beef. And if we follow this beef one, right, it's gone clear up in the 80s, clear up to 90-ish pounds of meat a year, and it's tailed off down to about where it started, 55 pounds, 50 pounds of beef a year. Our chicken has steadily risen, right? We eat a lot more chicken now. Got Buffalo Wild Wings, all sorts of different places where we love to eat chicken, right? So chicken has been climbing, beef has been declining a little bit. Pork has stayed pretty stable this entire time, and turkey has climbed just a little bit, right? Especially in the 1990s, late 80s, they pushed you know, turkey's a more healthy alternative, so it got a little more popular. Um, this one right here is showing how many millions of cattle we had. 1920, we had 12.5 million cattle alive here in the United States. Peaked in uh, mid to late 70s, about 45 million cattle in the U.S., and it's dropped to about 30 million cattle today in the United States. Why is that important? Because with these 30 million cattle, we're raising more beef than we were with these 45 million cattle, right? We're getting more meat with less animals. So, and that's what this one right here shows, right? In the 1920s, right, you got about 540 pounds of beef from a single animal, single cow. Today we're getting nearly 800. On some of them, we're certainly getting 800 pounds of beef from a single cow, or single animal, right? So we're doing a lot better. We're being a lot more efficient with our breeding, and our feeding programs to maximize, get every bit we can out of each animal. And this would mirror other animals as well, like sheep and pig and chickens, right? As we've gone on, technology's gotten better. We have better feed sources. We're getting more pounds of meat per animal than we did before. Um, and this just shows how many total pounds of meat, this is all types of meat, were consumed in the United States. 1909, we don't know for sure, but it's a rough estimate. About 10 billion pounds of meat were consumed. 2012, about 52 billion pounds. Right? Billion is a big number. That's a lot of animals. It's a lot of work that goes into raising them. So, and then this just shows the um, worldwide meat consumption. So Luxembourg is a country that consumes, each person um, consumes around 300 pounds of meat a year, and that's again all types of different meat. United States and Australia, about 270 pounds of meat per person a year. right? These are relatively wealthy countries, and if we were to look at a bigger list, you'd see other wealthy countries. And you look over here on the lowest, these are poor countries, right? Third world countries, they cannot afford meat. Meat is more of a luxury, so they consume, in a year, so the average person in India is only eating 7 pounds of meat, right? I eat 7 pounds of wings in a month. So it's completely different when you go to a different country. Really quickly, you should be able to identify meat just by looking at it, right? Beef is a cherry red color, white fat. Okay, it's larger in size, bigger cuts, thicker cuts usually, right? It's that cherry red with the white fat. This is pork. It's got a pale pink color, sometimes an almost white color. It also has a white fat. It's a much whiter fat than the beef. The beef would be a little bit more yellowish fat. It's still white, but if you compare these two, right, pork has a much wider fat. And then lamb, it's a darker red color. It also has white fat. You're going to see it in smaller cuts, right? It does look a little bit like beef, but you're going to always see it in these nice small cuts because lamb are much smaller animals. Okay, so here's some of the wholesale cuts. Um, we've got our round, chuck, short plate flank, sirloin, short loin, rib area, brisket, right? These are the um, larger cuts, right? We'll get multiple retail cuts. So when you go to the store, right, you're not going to find a this entire thing in one piece, right? It's going to be broken down into smaller pieces. Um, Same with our pig. We have wholesale cuts here. We got the shoulder, loin, side, ham. Okay, the loin. Well, we'll talk about. But again, we break these into smaller cuts um, that are sold in the grocery store. Lamb, same thing. Similar names, right? Leg, shoulder, rib, loin, breast. Okay. And then if we can start breaking down some of these retail cuts, right? T-bone steak, okay, that comes from the short loin. We get our round roast from the round. Okay, flank steaks from the flank. We have short ribs from the short plate. Okay, this is also sometimes just called the short ribs. We'll get cross cuts from the shank over here. Brisket obviously just comes from the brisket. And then you do get some bone steaks from the chuck area, right? And this is just an example, just a few of the retail cuts. Okay, here's a much more comprehensive list of all the retail cuts. I don't expect you to memorize all of these, but this is a good reference. Short loin is the most valuable portion on the animal. Okay, that's where we get our T-bones, our tenderloins, filet mignons, porterhouse, all of those steaks, right? The next most valuable would probably be the sirloin, followed by the round. Okay, a lot of valuable cuts of meat in those as well. Obviously, you all know sirloin steak. It's just a slightly lower quality, smaller steak than your T-bone, porterhouse, those types of steaks, right? So these are all the different cuts, right? And it shows you where they come from. So if you ever were curious, you could search one of these. You just search retail cuts of beef, and you'll be able to see this. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna buzz through this. Pigs, same thing, right? We have the leg or the ham. Okay, you get several different cuts here. Obviously the ham, which you always eat, sliced ham, stuff like that. From the loin is the most profitable portion of a pork. You get your loin chops, or you might call those pork chops. Most people call them pork chops. They're actually called loin chops. Um, and a whole bunch of other different cuts of meat here. Your ham, your ham or leg would be the next most profitable. Okay. We'll buzz through. I don't know what that is. What the heck is that? All right. Okay, lamb. If you've never tried lamb, try it. It's delicious. It's one of my favorite meats. Um, whole eggs, right? That's a very popular thing just to grill or smoke or roast on its own, the entire leg. Um, the leg on um, a lamb is probably the most profitable, followed by the loin. Um, so again, on almost all animals, right? It's this this area, the rump, and then the loin rib area. That's where the money is made. That's where the most valuable meat comes from. The best tasting, and it doesn't matter if it's a pig, cow, or sheep, right? It's this rump area up into the ribs where the best meat comes from. Okay, we're going to stop there for this week. Okay, check the assignment below this. There's one assignment. It's easy. You should be able to do it quick. But um, you can actually also do it on the internet. You don't have to leave your home to complete it, although it is easier if you go to a Walmart or a Costco or a place like that that sells meat. You can get the information there. Okay, thanks, guys.